What we're going to cover tonight are 17 sentence structures. Each one of these things is a machine that activates something inside of another person's brain and makes their neurology do all of the work. You're not going to argue, not going to push for any of these sentences I'm going to give you. You're delivering the architecture and their own brain is going to finish the job. The specific words I say tonight, they're just examples. The words are going to change every single time. The situation's going to be different, the person changes, but I want you to understand the architecture. There's something underneath every one of these 17 sentences that connects all of them, but I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. I'd rather show you than tell you. This was discovered, and it was discovered over and over independently by people who never met, never read each other's work across probably 2,500 years. So Socrates, he asked questions that made the other person's own logic kind of eat itself alive. He'd sit across from the smartest person in Athens, and in 4 or 5 sentences, that person would be publicly contradicting themselves, and they wouldn't really understand how it all happened. If you look at Cicero didn't win all of these trials by arguing harder. He spoke sentences that preloaded the jury's conclusions before the defense ever even stood up. And if you want to look at a different genre of people, let's talk about cult leaders. It's the exact same architecture. Manson, Jonestown, Nexium cult. So the recruiter doesn't ask for anything when they're joining a cult. The recruit volunteers these things, or at least it feels like they're volunteering. If you go to a different persuasion scenario, a suicide hotline, a person calls in, they want to die. One sentence can change something. If you look at hostage negotiation, the FBI model, the negotiator is not waiting for yes, they're waiting for 2 words. We want the words "that's right" in the other person's head. So it means that their brain adopted my reality as reality. These sentences tonight that we're learning are going to be divided into different families, and each family is something that a sentence can do to a human brain. So 4 families, we're going to go through 17 of these architectures. Let's go. In this first family, these are sentences that make the other person argue your position for you. They have one thing in common. You never, ever, ever state your position. You build a sentence where the only available exit is through a door that you built for them to come walking through. So they argue for you. They build the case, and they think it was their own idea. Sentence number 1, this is called the reversal. A person calls in, they're sobbing, calling into a suicide crisis hotline. They want to die. The person on the other end of the phone, the counselor, let's call it, they ask, how much do you want to live on a scale of 1 to 10? So they say, I don't know, 3. And the counselor on the phone says, why didn't you say 2? And the person right away starts explaining why life is worth living. So that it's put them into that frame automatically. They didn't tell them to do that. They didn't convince them. The architecture of that sentence left only one direction to move, which is toward arguing for survival. So that's called reversal. We establish a position the listener already holds, then we ask why they don't hold a weaker version of it. The only way to answer is to defend the stronger position, which is whose? Yours. An example is, this is obviously keeping you up at night. What is stopping this from being something that you just ignore? That's a reversal. They can't answer that question without building the case for why it matters. They're going to list every reason it's important, why they can't walk away, it's important to my family. You did not ask, why does this matter to you? What you're asking is, why can't this just be dismissed? Sentence number 1, it's the purest expression of what all 17 do. We create conditions. That's your job as an author. Sentence number 2, this is called the impossible question. So an example of this would be, what would need to be true for this to feel like the obvious move? So there's no answer to this question that takes them further from where you want them. None. Every single response builds this path forward, and they're the ones drawing the map for you. But then there's a word in there. The word is obvious. It's the structural key to this. You're not asking that person to justify some hard decision. What are you asking them to do? Describe the conditions under which the decision would not require thought, which is a big deal. And that's the key essence of sentence number 2. So by the time they finish answering, they've kind of constructed a reality where the path is a little more simple. Another example of this, I'm just curious. I've got to ask you, if there's just one thing standing in the way, just one, what would it be? But 2 things happen, like if they're able to answer that question. The barrier shrinks because we know what happens when we call out scripts. We name a fear, and naming a fear makes it smaller. This is the essence of Rumpelstiltskin. That's why that is a timeless tale. It's built into our head. We name something we're afraid of, we can make it smaller and less powerful. We didn't say this out loud, but what we're secretly getting them to tell us if this one thing was handled, the path would be clear. Sentence number 3. This is the presupposition. What was the moment that you realized that this was something that you needed to do? Count the presuppositions buried in the sentence. What was? Which means there was a moment. The existence is assumed for that. You realized, a realization has already occurred. This was something that you needed to do. The need is a fact. So there's 3 presuppositions in one sentence. So the architecture of this thing is you want to embed your desired conclusion in the grammar of a question. And another example, what finally made it click? They're not questioning whether anything really clicked. The sentence kind of told them it did. Their brain's going to construct the moment of clarity out of thin air, even if it didn't exist 5 seconds ago. So this is how every good hypnotist in history worked. They don't tell you to relax. They ask you what you notice when you begin to relax. And those are very, very different things. That question is the delivery vehicle here. So then we get into family number 2. And family number 2 is sentences that collapse resistance. These are kind of wall-dissolving questions. They name what's happening inside of somebody precisely to kind of get them to stop pretending, be more open and present. And it's not because we're breaking through somebody's wall. It's just that there's nothing left to break through. And this is called the label. It sounds like this might feel like a trap no matter what the choice is. And even if I make a choice, it sounds like something's getting lost. So this is the architecture that hostage negotiators and the best therapists in the world arrived at, both probably independently. When you name somebody's emotional state accurately, and you name somebody's emotional state before they found a word for it themselves, their nervous system registers that another human being just saw what's actually happening inside them. And the emotion loosens the grip on that person. Every unnamed emotion controls you and controls your life. So all we're doing is helping them to name the emotion that we want to loosen the power of. If I can name it, I can allow that person to observe it. So the act of labeling moves it from brainstem to cortex. It goes from something that's happening to them, something that they can see. You want to name that person's internal state. That's the key. In their language, not your language. So the words they would use if they could find them. Another one is, I get why you're upset about this. And what you're saying right now, it doesn't sound like anger. It sounds like hurt. And those are very different things. This is pre-framing, right? So we're still in the same category, but I'm reframing what they thought was anger. How many times have you been pissed off and your brain goes, I am experiencing anger right now. So I get to jump in. The moment that you're feeling that emotion, you haven't labeled it yet. So I get to jump in and label it for you. And your brain accepts it. 99% of people can't tell anger from hurt in themselves, especially when the emotions are running high. So the entire relationship to the situation starts shifting here, because anger fights, hurt softens up. The person who was fighting just a few seconds ago, automatically, just like we relabeled what they're feeling, and they just become somebody who needs to be heard. And one way to do it if you're talking to a person that's defensive is to start off by saying, I may be wrong about this, but I know that I've been in this situation many, many times, and here's what I did. And you talk about the mistake that you made. Every time I got upset about something, I was mixing up anger and hurt because they feel so similar to each other. You talk about your own mistakes and you're automatically going to get the defensive person, since you're talking about you, to start doing a scan in themselves to see if they're making the same mistake. Chris Voss has used this in kidnapping negotiations in real life, and it's very effective. The moment that person heard their emotion named back to them, what comes back in their head is, that's right, you see me. And once a person feels seen, the war is just about over. This is the witness. A great example that you could just keep in your pocket pretty much word for word is, I can tell that you carry a lot for other people, and it just seems like nobody's ever said that out loud to you. So we're naming what someone has been, who they've been, maybe their whole life. And we're going to tell them that it's visible, that someone finally sees it. When a person feels genuinely witnessed, the critical factor of our brain, the default mode network, disappears at that moment. The prefrontal cortex slows all the filtering stuff, and you didn't trick the brain. So what happens is, every time that we feel seen, our brain says, you are safe, and we cannot control that switch. I know you had a voice in your head just now that was like, yeah, I probably can. We can't do that, which is what makes this technique one of the hardest. If you don't actually see what you're naming, they're going to feel the emptiness, and the wall goes up harder than it did before. So this requires you to have been paying attention in the conversation pretty genuinely. And another example of this that you could use pretty much anywhere is, I think there's a kind of person who never lets anybody see him struggling. They just handle it mostly quietly for years, and nobody ever asks them if they're okay because they're so good at just looking fine. It's a big moment. This is a huge moment for people. You're describing a type of person. I didn't say you. I'm not saying here's who you are. So you're talking about the world. I'm making an observation about the world. And the person right across from us is hearing their whole life described. After you deliver this little sentence, something's going to happen in that person's face that you will never forget the first time you see it. And I call it a micro collapse. This little mask that they've been maintaining softens for about a second. And what you do in that half second defines who you are as a human being. This is the voluntary confession. An example of this is, and I want you to really feel like we've been in a conversation for a while, and I stopped just for a minute and I paused and I looked at you and I said, John, I just want to say that there's something that's not being said. And I want you to know, whatever it is, I can handle it. So that's two architectures in one here. First, there's something that's not being said. And I want you to know the difference between that and you're not saying something, or you're not telling me something. So you've named the existence of something without accusing anybody. The second thing that's happening here is, I can handle it. Not, it's totally safe for you to talk to me. How manipulative does that sound? I can handle it communicates a lot of strength. So whatever this thing is, it's not going to break me. It's not going to change anything between us. Another great one, this little confession sentence here is, the thing that's hardest to say is probably the thing that actually matters here. You notice I put a big pause in there. And all this is just like a Socratic philosophical observation. I'm not pointing it or aiming it at anybody. We're describing a pattern, like we're making an observation about the world and how people navigate hard conversations, and they saw themselves in it. You didn't put them in the situation. They saw themselves in it. So the confession that comes after is volunteered instead of extracted out of somebody. So you made the cost of silence heavier than the cost of truth. That's basically what an interrogation is. How can I make silence or denial very costly to this person? I want to be straight with you really quick. NCI level 4, which is called grad school, it's my life's work. 20 years in the Navy, every hour of research, every program that I've ever built in my life, the entire NCI system all leads here. This is the reason Dr. Phil called me the best in the world at what I do. It's why you've seen me on pretty much every podcast on the planet. It all comes from this. Think about the last time you walked into a room where you were outmatched, outranked. The other side had lawyers and leverage and pretty much every structural advantage. And you sat there knowing that you were about to get handled and there was nothing you could do about it. You felt it before anybody even opened their mouth. NCI 4 flips that permanently. You're going to learn the most advanced methods in the world, I guarantee it, with influence formulas that stack multiple techniques and sequences to produce outcomes most people wouldn't even believe are possible. This is the permission. And just with this, let's start with like a simple example. You're allowed to want this. Explicit, verbal permission by another human being to want what they want. We get permission to work, permission to suffer. When was the last time somebody looked you in the eye and said, you're allowed to want something for yourself? It's a deeper moment. And imagine if you followed like this, the confession strategy, and then said this, and then did the observation. Like, I can tell you this type of person, I know you're going through a lot. And then this, then layered this on top. Sentence says basically the obligation isn't real. The architecture of this is we want to identify the thing that somebody obviously wants, but they've been denying themselves. It applies in every conversation. The other person wants something and they've been denying it to themselves. It's never permission to have something. It's permission to want it. Those are very different things. So sentence number 8 is a reframe. Somebody says, you know, John, I've seen this a lot, and that's not fear. That's your body telling you that this actually matters. So we're changing a person's relationship to their own internal experience. You take the label somebody has put on their own experience. We're going to take a little fingernail on the corner, peel that sucker off, and then put a new label on there that serves the other person. For it to stick on the door, or that emotion, it has to serve the other person or it's not sticky. Somebody's anxious, they have some kind of anxiety. And we say, you know, that thing that a lot of people feel, and they call it anxiety, is actually just readiness. So we're not changing the body, we're not changing neurology, we're changing the story around the feeling. And the story is the only thing that was ever driving the behavior in the first place, I guarantee you. So something that gets filed inside of a file cabinet of fear, what protocol is it going to run? It's going to run the fear protocol, the avoidance, the withdrawal, the paralysis. The same experience that gets pulled out of the fear file and then gets filed under, this is a signal that something matters, is going to run a crazily different protocol. Attention, engagement, approach, same input, different processing, different behavior. So same input. This is what the best crisis counselors in the world use in the middle of somebody's panic attack. They don't go, hey, calm down, everything's okay. There's nothing to be afraid of. They say, oh, Jennifer, this is exactly what the body does when something important is happening. And the panic doesn't stop. The person's relationship to it starts to change. And that's enough. Family number 3. These are sentences that install identity. They're about who somebody is. If we accept an identity, once we say it out loud or nod at it, or even if we just fail to correct it, our neurology is going to enforce it from the inside. Their own brain becomes the police force that protects whatever we just got them to basically agree to. Identity confirmation. It's obvious, but you're the one in the room who actually sees what's happening. Has that always been a thing for you, or did something like change for you along the way? 2 moving parts firing at once. Assigning identity, but it doesn't feel like we're assigning them anything. We're recognizing, not assigning. We're not giving them anything. We're just pointing at something that was already there. So that framing, the way that you frame that, bypasses all the defense. Nobody resists being accurately recognized. I want you to think about that. Second thing that we're doing here is, has that always been a thing, or did something change? Both of those answers kind of confirm the same identity. Let's do a different example, like a work example. You know, the way that just got handled, most people wouldn't have had that kind of composure. And the kind of steadiness that you have, that didn't come from nowhere. And then you look at them a little bit and just be silent. What are they going to say? I guarantee you they'll go into a story. 100% of people will. So we're not asking a question here like we did in the last example. We're making a verbal statement about something we observed, and then we're kind of implying some depth. Like that didn't come from nowhere. We describe what we saw, and then we imply that it has roots. That's the structure of this thing. They'll volunteer the rest of the information. And the moment that they volunteer that information, you have locked them into that identity, whatever complement that you observed. So the architecture really quick is observe some genuine quality. We name that quality as identity using some language that frames you as noticing that thing. And then step 3 is leave some kind of a door open that they walk through on their own. This is the accusation inversion. And an example is, I may be wrong, but to me it seems like you're probably not the kind of person who just goes all in on something because your gut says to. So either they're like, yeah, you're absolutely right, I like to get the details ready, or their system's going to fire immediately and they have to correct you. No, actually, I've always trusted my gut. They've handed you a confession of how they make decisions either way, and you didn't ask for it. The sweet spot here is an identity that they want to disprove. Disproving it makes them look like the person that they want to be. You might say, a lot of people reach this point and they just decide it's easier to stay comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it's a choice. There's something wrong with it. Everybody hearing that sentence knows there's something wrong with it. But saying nothing wrong with that, you gave them some space to disagree with you, right? So we're setting up a disagreement trap, which is different than elicitation. Sentence 11 is the gap. So an example of the gap is, I just gotta say, I'm surprised you're still thinking about this. That doesn't seem like you. Instant fracture. So if they're hesitating, they now have a problem. You told them hesitation is inconsistent with who they are, and you said it with genuine surprise. They have 2 options. Confirm they're a person who hesitates, which is diminished identity, or close the gap by acting. And you're not going to close some giant billion-dollar deal with this. This nudges in the right direction. All of these are nudges. And what do? What's our bread and butter? Is creating conditions. And each one of these little things creates a condition. Another one that hits harder if you've got the ovaries to use it is, everything said in the last 5 minutes sounded like somebody who already knows the answer. Now they have to go back through what they said and kind of realize they were building the case the entire time. So the architecture here is we express some genuine surprise that this person, what I'm seeing in this person, their current behavior, doesn't match the identity that they've demonstrated for however long you've known them. So the surprise has to sound real here. That's the big one. If it sounds strategic or rehearsed, it sounds like manipulation. If it sounds like you're just noticing something that doesn't fit, that's the trick here. Sorry, I'm just noticing this thing that didn't fit. That's all. Their own brain does the enforcement. And sentence 12 is the lock. And here's a direct example of this. If the people closest to somebody could describe what that person stands for in one sentence, that sentence says everything about how they're going to behave when it matters. So what are we doing? I'm teaching some principle as a truth about human behavior. Then pause. And then I might ask, so what would they say about you? And now they're going to answer. And it depends on the situation. Or you might say a different question like, I think there is actually a question that separates people who drift through life from people who actually mean something. And I think the question is really, what would you fight for if you knew you couldn't win? We framed the question before we asked it. What does that do? It sets up their psychology to hear the question differently. People who drift versus people who mean something. You can fill in those blanks. People who blank. So the architecture here is you ask someone to articulate their deepest, highest value in a way that feels like self-reflection. And then when they answer, their neurology is going to enforce that so much more ruthlessly than you could ever hope to enforce anything in that person's head. This is the conspiracy. This first example would sound like, most people aren't ready to hear what we're actually talking about right now. So there's instantaneous tribe and group involvement. It's two people in a circle, everybody else is outside. One sentence. Every cult in history uses a version of this. Bonding mechanisms that we've ever figured out. So if we feel like I'm part of a select group, it helps. So the fourth family is sentences that create inevitability. First is the installation. This is sentence 14. This stopped being about the money a long time ago. This is about whether somebody keeps living the same year over and over. So the architecture does not enter the existing frame. It erases the other person's frame. Whatever they thought it was about, details, terms, APR, percentages, whatever. New frame is about identity and how a life gets lived and reputation versus a transformation. Identity will beat logistics 100% of the time. There is no exception. Identity will always beat logistics. And let's say you're talking about somebody else and you want to talk about somebody else but still hack this person's identity a little bit. And you want to say, what, at some point it stops being a decision and it starts being a statement about who somebody is. That's a big one. And let's say you're talking about somebody else, but this person secretly knows that you view the world this way, which means that they secretly know that you view them this way. 15. This is regression. But something in the middle of a conversation where you're saying like, do you remember the first time somebody really believed in you? Not like the polite kind, like a elementary school teacher where they have to kind of kiss your ass. I mean like the kind where you could feel it. And I think it was different for a lot of people. What did that feel like for you? So we're kind of kicking the adult offline, even if it's just for a few seconds. Activate a childhood memory with enough specificity and you will create regression. That's all you've got to do. So when we say not the polite kind, it's doing a whole lot of heavy lifting here, because without saying that, they go to a lukewarm memory. You could say another phrase like, there's this thing that happens in childhood, and you take a breath. Somebody says just one thing, one sentence at the exact right moment, and it changes the entire trajectory. And 30 years later, 40 years later, you still remember it. You remember where you were standing, what the room smelled like. Whatever you say immediately after that regression thing, while that little state is still active, is going to land differently than anything that you could say to the defended, armor-wearing, calculating adult version of that person. So you really got to choose. Anything I say after confusion statements, anything I say after regression. Let's go to number 16, the fait accompli. So a year from now, when you look back on this, what part of it do you think is going to matter the most? And that's the first example. Man, I wasn't going to say this, but I just got to ask, once somebody actually does something like this, the morning after, what do you think that first feeling is? And so I'm pushing it off to someone else. I didn't say you, right? That would sound like a weird sales technique. I'm saying once somebody does something. So the morning, and when I say the morning after, it's very concrete. It's very sensory. Their brain isn't processing a hypothetical. You built a morning. You built it just because there was specificity there. So now, not making a decision, I've tied it to giving up a feeling that you've already experienced. Statement 17, the exit seal. But I do want to say, as we're doing this, you already know what you need to do, and you've known for a little while. That's example 1. No pitch, there's no push or anything like that. So we're just implying kind of 3 things at one time. The answer already exists inside of the other person. They have been avoiding it, and somebody can see both of those things. It's a big thing, and it's a short little example. You are opening a loop that cannot be closed by thinking. That's what we're really doing here. How can I open more loops that can't be closed by just thinking about it? So we had 17 architectures, but I want you to pay attention to what one thing that none of them did. Not one of them told you what to think. Not one of them argued a single position. Not one of them was persuasive at all. They were influential, but persuasion implies convincing, right? And here's the one thing that ties them all together, the loop that I opened that you couldn't close by thinking at the very beginning of tonight's lesson, when I said I wasn't going to tell you what ties them all together, the big thing that they have in common. They created a condition where the other person's own brain did the persuading, the deciding, committing, surrendering. That's the discovery. That's the thing that Socrates found, the cult leaders found, the suicide hotline people found, hostage negotiators, trial lawyers, name it, parents, good parents. The most powerful sentence you will ever speak is one where you say almost nothing and the other person's entire reality shifts. And why does it shift? It's not because of what you said. It's because of what their own mind did with what you said. And those are very different. And that's why we're creating conditions. The words will be different every single time. The structures will never be different. If you learn these 17, I guarantee you get good at them, your life is going to change. From neuroscience to microbiology and the actual hardware underneath human influence, you're going to stop understanding this as a concept and start feeling it work in real time. 40 minutes into that exact same meeting that you might have been in, these people are agreeing to terms that they walked in planning to reject, and they think it was their idea. People come into this program as professionals and they leave as something else entirely. Their marriages change, their income changes, the way their kids respond to them changes. I've watched it happen thousands of times and it still gets me. And after this, you graduate as an NCI author. This is the top fraction of a % of communicators on the planet. And that's what I want to turn you into. That's what the entire NCI system was built for. If you want to find out if this is right for you, there is a link below to book a call with my team or to learn more. There's no pressure, no pitch, just a conversation about where you are and where this can take you. This is NCI for grad school. The link is right down in the description.
Authorities are reporting a citywide manhunt underway.
The world is breathing, a fragile sound. No echoes here, on sacred ground. A quiet pose, a steady beat, the truth we feel in simple heat. Barefoot steps on hallowed ground, a sacred rhythm we have found.
The world just breathes and I can feel it. A perfect promise can't conceal it. Just shadows leaning on the light. Another beautiful quiet night.
The past is gone, but we remain, washing over all the pain. A simple truth, a feeling pure, a soft connection to endure.
The world just breathes and I can feel it. A perfect promise can't conceal it. Just shadows leaning on the light. Another beautiful quiet night.